like to introduce the most famous person in our town who is a poet laureate. He's one of 27 authors from Ogunquit, quite a number of people, isn't it? And you all know him, so I'm not going to give you his name until I finish what I have to say. Being a poet laureate has sat gently on his shoulders. He's so modest. It was so hard to get him to come. This is our 7th Gabby gathering. Haven't the weeks gone by? And we have one more next week, and then they'll have a little break, I think.
We actually have 2 more.
2 more, okay, fine. Well, anyway, this is the 7th. And welcome to the Ogunquit Memorial Library. Richard Perkins is going to entertain you with some of his odes today. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
And Robert. Robert and Marcia.
I thought you were going
Okay,
to... Marcia's going to say something.
we have a plan. We've been working it out. First of all, I just wanted to say that I was so honored to be invited by Richard to come to be his sidekick and his friend and his confidant, and to introduce him. The first thing I want to say is when Judith Woodbury was the first person that said to me, "Don't you think that we ought to have Richard be our poet laureate?" She says, "I'm going to make a laurel wreath." And I said, "Let's make it happen." We were going to plan a party at the Dunaway. That didn't work out. So I set up one night and I decided I was going to write a proclamation and deliver it to the selectmen. It was a secret. Richard did not know about it. That was pretty hard to pull off. And so I wrote the proclamation and went down to the selectmen, and they anointed him our poet laureate. And I'm going to read the proclamation. And another thing, Judith was interviewed by the Coastal Star, and I just love what she said. This is a quote from it. She said, "While Ogunquit is known as an art colony, one of the things that we think about is that words are art. Richard is an artist in the way that he uses words. I call him a wordsmith, and I think that's a good use of the word because he knows how to manipulate a word." So I thought that was just so interesting that Judith has made us aware that being a poet is also being an artist. You don't have to necessarily have a paint box. So I want to read you this proclamation because it really gives you the full scope of Richard's life in a nutshell. And usually when you write a proclamation, you write whereas after every single paragraph, and it's just so monotonous. But that's the official way you do it. So I'm going to leave out all that whereas. So here we go. Town of Ogunquit proclamation honoring Richard W. Perkins as Ogunquit's poet laureate. Richard W. Perkins, Citizen of the Year in 2014, and also known as Ogunquit's oldest teenager, was born in York and attended York local schools. In his early years, he served as a licensed sea captain, was an artist model at the Ogunquit School of Painting and Sculpture and the Art Students League in New York City. After spending time in Palm Beach, Florida, Richard introduced fine dining to Ogunquit. He helped many of his waiters and kitchen staff to open their own restaurants, and therefore we see a flourishing culinary arts community today. Richard owned numerous restaurants, entertaining many Wales celebrities, and one royal, Prince Charles. He put Ogunquit on the map as a culinary destination. Richard, being a business owner and an innovator with a God-given talent for writing, wrote the very first culinary column for the local newspaper, as well as articles with humorous life stories, recipes for many books and publications. Richard's talents in writing continued with the birth of his well-known Odes. Over the years, he has written over 600 odes. Well, now it's over 1,000. With in various subjects, honoring his friends, birthdays, holidays, the weather, wild turkeys, his beet relish recipe, growing old, food, vodka, and the How Rude documentary, cats, dogs, his pets, and many of Ogunquit's cast of characters. A documentary about Richard's life, How Rude, was produced in 2011. Over 300 Ogunquit citizens and many of his fans attended the premiere at the Levitt Theater. Thank you, Peter and Maureen. Richard wrote many odes about the making of the movie at the time. Richard's odes and life stories have been published in many newspapers and local publications, including the Historical Society of Wales and Ogunquit and the Friends of the Ogunquit Museum, Heritage Museum newsletter. Many of his friends have been honored and surprised with framed odes written by Richard W. Perkins, a treasured gift that always brought a smile. Now, therefore, be it bestowed that we, the Select Board of Ogunquit, on behalf of the community, do hereby reclaim from this day forward that Richard W. Perkins, in his 88th year, is proclaimed Ogunquit's Poet Laureate, signed and sealed this 7th day of August 2018.
Before I start, in 1966, at Poor Richard's Tavern, Time magazine did an article on 42 restaurants well worth the trip. And Robert and I had the honor of being the number one. It's in that framed old Time magazine there. And they talk about our being famous for our Yankee pot roast jardiniere. Right below the frame, there's a box of 50 copies of the pot roast recipe for you all to take home. Now, you all know me, but you don't know all about me. So I'm going to read an ode I wrote about myself as my first entry. You're gonna know me better after this. Okay, you ready? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
About me. First, I must tell you, I wasn't born, I was discovered. How rude. Actually, I was born on August 25th, 1930. I was so ugly the doctor slapped my mother. The fourth child of 8 children, my grandmother Perkins was a tremendous influence in my growing up years. She had an exuberant personality, drank bourbon, smoked cigars, loved to dance, and was loved by anyone that knew her. She claimed that the fourth child in a large family was always the odd one. I have indeed lived up to that most sage adage. I never knew my grandfather Leander Perkins. He died before I was born. However, I looked so much like him, my grandmother would often stare at me and sigh, saying, "He will never be dead as long as you're alive." The reason my grandmother lived with us was due to the fact that our mother, arriving home with the 8th baby, placed the baby in a crib. She went upstairs, packed her bags, and disappeared. We didn't see her again for 18 years. Thusly, my grandmother Perkins came to help my father raise the children, which indeed was a blessing, for our mother was indeed a difficult and cruel woman. Our grandmother brought love into our lives. Our mother running away was perhaps the best thing that could have happened. The years passed swiftly, and when I was 14, I went to work at the Red Arrow Diner in Wells, the very beginning of my restaurant career. I already had considerable knowledge of cooking, for out of the 8 children, my grandmother picked me to help her with the cooking. I went to work at the diner at 5 in the morning, went to school at 8 a.m., went back to the diner to work until 8 p.m., doing homework between serving patrons. I received the lofty sum of $14 a week, giving half to my father to help with the household expenses. Let me fast forward here. When I was 18, I took a job as a waiter at the Surf Room restaurant in Ogunquit. It is the very same building now known as the front porch. At the ripe old age of 20, I took a sabbatical from the restaurant world. I purchased a 43-foot lobster boat, gussied it up, and took tourists on scenic boat rides out of Perkins Cove. I loved the ocean. My father was a lobster man, so I had an innate knowledge of the sea. In the evenings, I was a life model for the art school in the Cove. When I met Isabel Lawando, also a nude artist model, we became lifelong friends. She was the first mate on my boat ride enterprise. She also had a strong influence in my life, for she was brilliant and educated in many ways. She was responsible for my becoming a would-be writer. She passed away on my birthday a year ago, August 25th. I think of her daily. Fast forwarding once again, in 1956, I met Robert Maurais, an extremely handsome young man. He came to Ogunquit for the summer from acting school in New York and to work at the Dancing Fan restaurant. That fall, we ventured to New York City and spent the winter. We returned to Ogunquit in the spring and opened our first restaurant. We were wildly successful and went on to an illustrious restaurant career. Our first restaurant was at the entrance to Perkins Cove. Poor Richard's Casseroles was known as the, it's now known as the Cuckle-Button Farm Gallery. Poor Richard's Casserole was known as, the dinner was a lofty $1.95. We moved up the hill to the corner of Shore Road in Pine Hill and opened Poor Richard's Tavern. Within 2 years, it became a landmark, and we wined and dined many, many famous celebrities and movie stars. We later on opened a small in-town restaurant for the locals called the Dickie Deer, an affectionate name from my grandmother. Then on to Poor Richard's Pub on Route 1, again an overnight and instant success. We had dancing, which was a large attraction. A few years ago, we created Clay Hill Farm. Of all of our establishments, this was the premier. We averaged 200 to 300 guests per night. We were renowned for our Sunday brunch and dancing, with 2 bartenders put to task to keep the drinks flowing. We retired 14 years ago and still enjoy each other's company after 50 years in the restaurant business and being partners for 62 years. Cheers, Richard Perkins. I didn't know that was so long. While I mentioned that right here, I've got somewhere, let me find it here. These are, I mentioned people dining at the tavern, celebrities. John Lane owned the Playhouse, loved Poor Richard's. It was his favorite place, and he had his own table. And because of John, these are some of the celebrities that dined there through the years. Better put my glasses on. Okay, we had Prince Charles, Betty Davis, Anne Francis, Anne Sheridan, Kitty Carlisle, Paul Lynde, Betsy Palmer, Shirley Booth, Julia Child, Gig Young, Elizabeth Montgomery, Van Johnson, Jane Powell, Myrna Loy, Jane Meadows, Burgess Meredith, Gloria Swanson, Faye Emerson, Sally Struthers, B. Lilly, Imogene Coco, Estelle Winward, Tallulah Bankhead, Edward Everett Horton, Signa Hasso, Craig Stevens, Alexis Smith, Arlene Francis, Gary Merrill, Dodie Goodman, Ed McMahon, Merv Griffin, Art Carney, Dana Andrews, Eva Marie Saint, and Claudette Colbert. All right, so on the Odes, I thought I'm going to do 2 or 3, 4 Odes, and then maybe go back to a chit-chat. And we all are here because we love Ogunquit. And I've written quite a few things about Ogunquit. And this is called an Ogunquit Limerick. Who would have thunk it to name a village Ogunquit? Perhaps an Indian in full dress, that would be my random guess. The Indians arrived via canoe, excitedly yelling Yahoo, spending wampum on a drunken spree in a beautiful place by the sea. They pitched a tent on top of a dune with lots of firewater, bathed the moon. They set the standard for this village in Maine, the criterion being slightly eccentric but sane. The tourists arrived, causing the Indians unrest. They canoed up the Josiahs to Agamenticus. Ogunquit is exciting and never humdrum, but to live here it takes a lot of wampum. Thanks to the Abenaki that paddled ashore so that we could live here forevermore. Okay. And this one, you want to make a little comment on anything?
Well, what I wanted to say is I scoured through Richard's 1,364 odes for 2 nights, then met with him, and he decided that it was just so difficult because Richard has written so many odes about Brenda's Jeffrey the cat, Naughty Kathy, Peter Clayton, Marilyn, all these people. I look around and he's written all these personal odes. So we felt that it's better to do the more generic odes, except for the Barnacle Billy ode, but that will be read later. So this one, and I didn't want people to sit here waiting for their ode to be read and feel disappointed. We didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So we've chosen ones that are more general.
All right, now we're going, this is more about Ogunquit. It's called Beautiful Place by the Sea, and just continue. A town of renown and named Ogunquit, definitely an individual, none other like it. A rock-bound coast and a sandy beach, boundless beauty, all within reach. 4.5 square miles seems small, but this little unusual town has it all. Down to earth, but very sophisticated, the faithful locals very dedicated. You can be yourself, and without a doubt, the criterion will be, he's a good scout. Even if it's considered eccentric or a bit balmy, you're home at Beautiful Place by the Sea. If you are poor or a multi-millionaire, Ogunquit remains most extraordinaire. Of being accepted here, have no fears. They put up with me for 89 years. All right, I'm going to go back to the Odes, the story about the Odes. Years ago at the old tavern, one evening we had a reservation for the name Nash, and it turned out to be Ogden Nash, the famous ode writer, who was renowned for writing 800. Only 800. So anyway, he came to dinner, and after dinner he asked Robert and I to join him, and we sat down, and he took a pencil, and while we were chatting, he wrote an ode about Poor Richard's tavern and Richard and Robert, and signed it Ogden Nash. And I thought, oh boy, that's really something. So I called the waiter over and I said to the waiter, take care of this cloth. He put it in the laundry. But we gave him a great funeral. All right, okay. This is a little more about Ogunquit. I hope you don't get bored with about Ogunquit, but as I say, I love it, and we all love it. It is often a factor in many small towns, a bevy of carriages and a few clowns. If you are a bit eccentric, they let you be. Their criterion, he's simply very happy. If you're talented or an entrepreneur, this town has the perfect atmosphere. Be yourself and let it all hang out. That's what living here is all about. Ogunquit offers so many things to do. Something ideal is here for you. Fine dining available for your pleasure. The beauty of this town a treasure. All of us nestled by the Atlantic Ocean. Ogunquit's not a town, it's an emotion. Even if very young or ancient as me, living here is a perpetual spree. See what we got here. Okay, where Robert and I live, just a half a mile from Ogunquit, up Berwick Road, and we have a huge backyard, and it's just unbelievable the amount of wildlife we have there. We have squirrels and chipmunks and fox and deer and raccoons and skunks and seagulls and blue jays and cardinals, and it goes on and on and on and on. And it gives me material for writing. Oh, as I look out and I see a cardinal, I write an ode. Or I see turkeys, I write an ode about turkeys. So this is one is called Our Backyard Menagerie. Behind our house, we have a big lot that has become a wildlife resort. Animals and birds hither and yon, they own the deed to our back lawn. Over 25 wild turkeys we feed each day, every kernel of corn gobbling hooray. Eating kernel of corn, gobbling hooray. Black crows lined up on a tree limb, patiently waiting to sneak furtively in. Blue jays, sparrows, and a red cardinal, and an occasional scavenger seagull. Animals also visit us around the clock, squirrels, chipmunks, and a handsome fox. Deer and raccoons and nocturnal opossums, our backyard menagerie, more than awesome. Taking care of their needs is what we do, but we had no intention of owning a zoo. All right. Okay, now this is one of my favorites. I looked up one morning and there was about 20, 25 turkeys, and 2 of them were pecking at the door for their corn. And so I thought, they're talking. So this is the result of that. Daily up to 25 wild turkeys on our front walk. Eavesdropping, I translated the gobbles into talk. Surprisingly, I learned that the males all have names. Each Tom Turkey also has an abundance of dames. Tom Brady and Tom Cruise, leaders of the pack. Tom Selleck and Tom Jones, guarding in the back. Then there is Tom Smothers and Tom Hanks. When we feed them, they fan their tails in thanks. Thomas Hardy and strutting pal Tom McCann, devouring the corn kernels to beat the band. The oldest turkey named Thomas and Jefferson, the president of the flock, his prompt confession. Thomas Paine and Dylan Thomas at the front door, being prodded onward by Thomas More. The turkeys so happy they dance the can-can, the high kickers, St. Thomas and Thomas Mann. As time passed, the flock became most tame. It's time to eat, they gobbled refrain. On Thanksgiving Day, they take a sabbatical. They're not just smart, they're rascals. There's a P.S. You're gonna love this P.S. We have to keep our window shades drawn. One of those birds is a peeping Tom. This is more about the turkeys. Turkey Talk number 2. Number 1 had 13 toms. That was that one. The wild turkeys that we named and feed have increased the numbers indeed. We now have Tom Jones singing a song. He invited loquacious Tom Brokaw along. Gobbling away is little Tommy Tucker, Tommy Hilfiger, in a tux enjoying supper. Thomas Wolfe befriended Thomas Edison. Tom Arnold did a stand-up comic session. St. Thomas Becket, our bishop of the crowd, asked Thomas Mann to read poetry aloud. Tommy Lee Jones filming the whole lot. Tom Bergeron teaching them the turkey trot. Tom Clancy, the novelist, recording the scene. Lowell Thomas reporting the nightly scene. All of this takes 25 pounds of corn per week. They're pecking at the door as we speak. That's that one. Okay. One more about turkeys. Beggars in our backyard. A flock of wild turkeys came to dine, day after day, time after time. An abundance of kernel corn their fare, which they consume with pecking care. But lately they seem somewhat discontent, and you won't believe this recent event. It would seem they have become rather grand. A handsome male gobbler made this stand. A glass of wine would enhance their meal. Chablis, if you please, would appeal. I'm not through with their request just yet. They also boldly suggested serviettes. Needless to say, I am in complete dismay of the wild turkeys demanding gourmet. They now have pinned a note on the door, if you please, a sit-down table for 24. I'm contemplating sending them on the run, showing them my double-barrel shotgun. Okay. Let's go around to do something else here. Okay, just to go on to something a little bit different. How about some cliches? I love cliches. This is called an array of cliches. A bee in your bonnet. If you should find a bee in there, you'll also have honey in your hair. A bull in a china shop. If he kicks up his heels and snorts, vacuum up the pieces, the end resort. A shotgun wedding. When the preacher gives the final word, the couple rush to the maternity ward. Naughty. An ace up his sleeve. As he was raking in the huge pot, the ace fell out, he was promptly shot. An apple a day. I tried this and kept the doctor away. You missed my wake, it was yesterday. As welcome as a skunk at a lawn party, if the animal arrives and lets out a spray, that would definitely end a delightful day. Okay, I want to take a little break, and I'm going to maybe tell a couple fun stories. Sure. This is one of my favorite stories. This is about a well-known elderly man in a little town way up in Maine, passed away, and the town decided to give him an old-fashioned funeral. And they had a horse-drawn caisson with a coffin in the back, and the funeral procession was going to the chapel at the top of the hill overlooking the village. And when the horse-drawn caisson got almost to the church, the buckboard broke, and the coffin fell out. And it went end over end down through the streets and down through the park and right through the drugstore window and came to rest against the apothecary counter. And the old pharmacist with his bifocals looked up and said, "Can I help you?" And the corpse replied, "Yes, what can you give me to stop this coffin?"
That takes the cake.
Oh, let's see now. What else?
Do you want me to tell something?
Yeah.
You probably have noticed that there aren't any naughty Odes. A couple of years ago, I gathered up a lot of Richard's Odes, and many of us went to the church. It was through the Wynn House, and we all read his Odes. And I just couldn't resist. I picked out a really naughty ode, and it was about Richard and Robert's friend, Roy. So I'm with Richard, and I said, "Do you think it's okay if I read this ode?" He said, "Oh, don't worry. Roy is dead, and nobody here remembers him, so I think it's going to be fine." Well, I read the ode, and everyone laughed, and it was very, very, very funny. So Brenda Goodale and I went to the front porch after to have dinner, and this couple came running over, and they started laughing, and they said, "Guess what? My name is Claudia, and I'm Roy's niece, and I was attending the Ode reading tonight. I went, oh no, what have we done? So it's not a good thing to read naughty Odes. The only thing naughty in this room is naughty Kathy. So go ahead.
All right. I know a lot of you, like Robert and I, we love animals. We're truly animal enthusiasts. So this one is about dog talk, about our dog. And we have Scamp. He's our 8th dog.
You still have Scamp.
Does that tell you how old we are? 8 dogs and one lived to be 19. All right, dog talk. Yep. A discovery that is not to my dismay. Our dog understands what we say. No doubt about it, they can comprehend in their canine way our communication. If you should happen to say the word bone, they'll come out of a nap like a cyclone. God forbid you should say let's go, they head for the door like a tornado. In trying to fool them, you have no choice. They have recorded the tone of your voice. If you don your coat and reach for your keys, they go into a spin, barking loudly, yippee. It has been scientifically proven to be true. They know exactly just what you're up to. When our dogs camp, we often have to spell. He can read our lips faster than hell. He recently did something extraordinary. He was in my office scanning my dictionary. I'll just go back a few years ago when I was, just a young lad. I was quite a dancer, and I won many, many dance contests. And one of the dance contests I won was at the Old Orchard Pier. And Harry James was the orchestra, and Betty Grable, they weren't married yet, she was in the band as a singer. And I said to my father, I was 14, I said to my father, I've got to go. And my father said, well, go, but be careful. I hitchhiked to Old Orchard, got to the dance. When the contest came on, I saw a girl that was dancing early, and she was a good dancer. I asked her to dance, and we won. We won the contest. Betty Grable came down from the stage and danced with me around the and the prize was $5. I had to give the girl $2.50. I tried to pick a fight with us, I wouldn't have to, but so here's the thing called dancing and prancing. Most everyone, it seems, by perchance, when hearing good music, loves to dance, strutting their stuff out on the floor, whether a mere tot or 94. As a youth, I could sure cut a rug, won a first prize for my jitterbug. Dancing and prancing the night away, I could shake a leg in my day. Often a good dancer is labeled twinkle toes. Then there are those that only do-si-do. We would clear the floor to watch a fandango, or cheer a couple executing a perfect tango. Fred Astaire tap dancing on the silver screen with Ginger Rogers, his dancing queen. As a young lad, I could dance up a storm. Now at the age of 89, a bit wobbly in my form. How are we doing for time?
I can't see that.
Well, we're getting there, okay. All right. The one about Barnacle Billy's is not an ode, it's an essay. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's about Ogunquit again. Never get tired about Ogunquit, okay? Only town in the world so named. A unique little town in southern Maine, and the one and only town so named. Would you believe it's called Ogunquit? That's not the only odd thing about it. The name derives from the Abnaki Indians' lore. They were canoeing by the beautiful shore, waving their paddles and shouting with glee, Look, beautiful place by the sea. Its acreage is 4.5 square miles, but it boasts a very large individual style. This popular resort has such a character, local personalities match a true factor. At any time during the yearly 4 seasons, you love Ogunquit for many reasons. It has put up with me for nearly 90 years, and hopefully at 100 I'll still be here. And this is about one of the world's most famous walks, the Marginal Way. The beautiful path is a 1-mile rove, ending up at Perkins Cove. The swirling tide pools and crashing surf, a breathtaking stroll on this good earth. The outcropping bayberry and bittersweet, 30 dedicated benches beckoning you to seat. To ponder the beauty of the Marginal Way, your temptation to return day after day. The bold Atlantic with waves pounding around each curve, more beauty abounding. Lobster boats and buoys adding to the scene. When the tide becomes low, another theme. The Marginal Way is over 100 years old, gracing our coast strong and bold. Ogunquit is blessed with this beautiful gem. At the end of your stroll, you will say, Amen.
But another thing, I really was always interested in Richard's middle initial. So while we were doing the movie, I said, well, gee whiz, how did you ever get W as a middle initial? What does it stand for? I want you to tell your friends about that. About being named.
Yeah, oh.
Yeah. I just think it's a good tidbit.
Yeah, my mother, as you know, had 8 children, and she named all of us after the doctor that delivered us. And the doctor that delivered me was Dr. Williams, so I became Richard Williams. That's what the W is. But somewhere along the line, something happened at Wells, and there was a lot of the papers were destroyed. And when they renewed them, they renewed my birth certificate, they left the S out. So my birth certificate says Richard William, but I was really Richard Williams. Yeah, so plural. Imagine 2 of me.
And you know what, another thing, Richard, I love the nun story. Could you tell that about when you were a sea captain with Isabel, and you had the packs, and you were, you know, do you want to tell that story or not? No? The nuns aren't going to go out with that?
I can't recall.
It was in the movie. It was in the movie, and we did a caricature about it.
I'm getting
Oh, that's okay.
pulling up kind of a blank on it.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay. It's one of my favorites. Okay, this is about Wells and Ogunquit. Wells and Ogunquit, both resort towns, known for far away and miles around. Many wonderful things to see and do, awaiting just to entertain all of you. Antique shops, boutiques, galleries galore, golfing, fishing, beaching, and much more. First-run movies and a playhouse of fame, one of the prettiest coastlines in Maine. Perkins Cove and Wells Harbor to be seen. Picturesque, the ultimate boating theme. Stroll the world-famous Marginal Way, a breeze at Wells on a hot summer day. Many fine restaurants of known renown, proudly featured in both towns. Visit Wells and Ogunquit every season, for they're the best, a damn good reason. And this is about Wells and Ogunquit being, you know, antiques everywhere. If you are an antique enthusiast like me, Wells and Ogunquit are the places to be. Antique shops here, antique shops there, antique shops and more everywhere. If a vintage article brings you pleasure, one person's trash is another's treasure. So welcome to the antique capital of Maine, to Wells and Ogunquit, 2 towns of fame. An old hook rug has the ultimate appeal, the same excitement as an old spinning wheel. A beautiful grandfather's clock, regal and tall, an elegant period coat rack for the front hall. Hand-sewn quilts or even an antique bed, lots of period furniture for your homestead. Shop after shop with memorabilia galore, from grand establishments to a quaint store. For all of the above, I can honestly speak, for I am, without a doubt, an antique. This is my naughty hour. This is about our chipmunks. Robert's going to cringe on this one.
The first time.
Our resident chipmunks. We have 2 chipmunks, most cute and dear. I have named them Smirnoff and Belvedere. By our outside chimney, their residential burrow, I overheard them saying, "Richard is our hero." A diet of peanuts, seeds, corn, and grain. How about some almonds, they sang in refrain. Tails swishing high and cheeks full of stuff, the tiny rascals never seem to have enough. They are foraging for the winter on a spree, while they care, without a care in the world, the tab's on me. Stockpiling for the long cold winter ahead, that's when they hibernate, snoozing in bed. Belvedere and Smirnoff had a decorator in, their 2-story condo now elegant as sin, leaving a lace-edged note just yesterday saying, "Just want you to know we're gay." Got time for one more?
Oh, yeah.
This is again about Ode to Dear Old Ogunquit. A beautiful beach with soft white sand, probably the finest in the land. The marginal wave takes your breath away while strolling it at any time of the day. Certainly most unique is Perkins Cove, a charming place for one to rove. Shops and restaurants and lobster boats, the eye-catching bridge that seems to float. The Ogunquit Museum of American Art, its outstanding view will give you a start. A fabulous and diversified art collection. This is truly an Ogunquit perfection. The Wynn House Museum on Old Beds Lane, a restored old house of Ogunquit fame, featuring the town history on display. Once you're inside, you'll want to stay. The beautiful Ogunquit Playhouse of renown, the first thing you see coming to town. Stars on the stage and in the audience too. When in Ogunquit, it is a thing to do.
Are you finished? Do you want to finish?
All but my reading the Barnacle Billy thing.
All right, do that now, would you?
Okay, we'll do that. This goes back to before Billy Tower opened Barnacle Billy's. He had a seine boat, and it was a beautiful boat called the Isabel J, named after your great aunt, right? Yep. And I heard he was looking for a cook, so I went to Billy, and Billy said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it," because I was at 18. I was pretty well known for cooking because I, helped my grandmother cook. So Billy said, "Now, the one thing though, if you get seasick, it's a no-no." Now I said, "Get seasick? My father was a lobsterman. Why would I? I was born in the Atlantic. I won't get seasick." So here's what happened.
In the kitchen.
Well, okay, here we go. Okay,
It's upside down.
okay. This was written. No,
You wrote it 1981, 39 years ago.
I wrote this 39 years ago, when I was 4.
The unsalty sailor.
Unsalty sailor. Okay. Damn, I think I better have a little sip of water. Yeah. It's vodka.
We brought some nets.
Who's the joker? This is called. This is called Unsalty Sailor. Although most of my life has been involved with restaurants and the business of food, I have certainly run the gamut in other enterprising sources of income. One summer in my late teens, I was the cook on the 50-foot seine boat called Isabel J. The captain and owner of the boat was Billy Tower, eventually the owner of the famous Monaco Billy's at Perkins Cove, Ogunquit. Although I was young and at the time, my reputation of being a good cook was relatively well known. When I applied for the position as a cook on the boat, Billy hired me post haste. However, he stated that if I was prone to seasickness, it would be out of the question. I scoffed at such a silly notion, for after all, I was brought up on the ocean's edge and I had spent many years on my father's small lobster boat. Prior to our first trip to the high seas, we charred the seine nets and headed out of the cove to set them, for they were cotton and had to be salted to prevent rotting. I was perched in the bow of the smaller seine boat, a 37-footer, and was wild with excitement about my forthcoming season at sea. As we left the mouth of the cove and came into deep swells, the boat began to ride the swells up and down, up and down. Suddenly I felt a wave of nausea in the pit of my stomach. Within a few minutes I knew I was helplessly seasick. It took every fiber in my body to control it, for if the crew noticed that I was ill, my thrill of a summer at sea would be vetoed. Somehow the hours passed and we were headed in. As we arrived at the dock, Billy asked how I liked it. "Just great," I replied with a fake smile. The next day we headed out and my first meal to cook was lunch. As I began to prepare a beef stew, baking powder biscuits, and a salad, that all too familiar feeling hit my stomach. Every few minutes I would climb up to the deck for air. I soon discovered that water was the only thing I could take or I would become ill. The first trip seemed endless. We were gone for nearly 3 weeks. While we were underway, if I stayed on deck, I would be fairly all right. But 3 meals a day had to be prepared for the crew. So I would do as much work in the gallery as possible, such as peeling potatoes out of the gallery, peeling potatoes, apples, or carrots on the deck, where the fresh air kept my sickness down to a dull roar. Strangely enough, when we spotted a school of fish and the crew scrambled into the smaller seine boat, my sickness would totally vanish in the excitement of the catch. I would be left alone on the big seine boat, but once they had dropped the net successfully around the school, I would bring the big boat over to pick up. Billy, who would then take the wheel, bringing the big boat alongside the smaller one. The crew would tie the nets between the two boats to make ready for bailing the catch into the hold, which had a 50,000-pound capacity. At this point in the operation, it was my task to guide the bailing net full of hundreds of wiggling fish over the hold. This was often dangerous, for if we were loading in any sea at all, it was difficult to guide the net directly over the hold as the boat rocked furiously. Many times I would be swung out over the edge of the boat with the net looking down into the angry sea. But after several tries, we would always have a direct hit. After all, we were working on shares, and every fish was money in our pockets. Looking back on the experience of that summer, it was a rewarding adventure indeed. We went into ports such as New Harbor, Vinyl Haven, Portland, Gloucester, and many other interesting places. I would have sea legs for the first half hour of being back on land, and often wondered just what I looked like wobbling down the street, scarecrow thin, deeply tanned with a rope holding up my pants, for I had lost a great deal of weight. Even under the circumstances, I never missed getting a hearty meal on time. Our menu just depended on how successful our catches were. Sometimes we would be weathered in and the larder would be on the barren side. But when we steamed in with a full hold, I would hasten to the store, stock up the best of everything, without a doubt, with Billy at the helm of the Isabel J. We were the finest kind of crew. Amen.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. It was much,
Okay.
much more than we expected. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay.
Thank you. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. I wish everyone here would have a chance to talk to Richard.